Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. At whatever time you hear this podcast, know that I greet you. It's Kelsey Janelle, and this is the Songbirds R Us podcast, where we talk about worship, we talk about warfare, we talk about Christ, and of course, we talk about culture. And I am so happy to be back on this podcast. It has been an extremely long time. It has been so long, but I had to come back because there's been a topic on my heart that I've been wanting to talk about for some time, and I wasn't sure how I wanted to go about it, but now I know. And I wanted to talk about Christ, culture, and how culture and religion, though they can run asynchronous, they are not synonymous. And I wanted to talk about that because oftentimes, especially being an African American, born and raised in, the diaspora, the African diaspora, and I'm pretty sure maybe the same even applies to those that are, born in predominantly white countries. If you are white and listening to this, I have no problem with that. I'm just making a point. You often feel disconnected, especially from culture. Some of us, we had the privilege of growing up in very cultural places, even in, America and the other parts of the diaspora. But there's some of us who we didn't get that. We just had our African American culture, some more American than African American. And, a lot of us, we felt this disconnect. We were just like, we don't really fit in to what's going on out here. There's definitely a lot that's different, but we didn't really have, a true avenue of where to connect and how to connect, and so that even happened with me. So I don't believe I've shared my testimony on this podcast before. At least I'm not sure. If I have, then it was a long time ago, but most likely I didn't. So what I would do is in the description, I will leave, I think part one. Yeah, I'll leave part one of my testimony on my YouTube. I'll leave it in the description. So make sure you check the description so you can go to that video. So I'll briefly talk about it here. So I was born and raised, in the church. My father's a pastor, my mother's an evangelist. Born and raised. And that's all I knew growing up. Just church. That's all I knew. I didn't do much else. I didn't go to parties. I lived a very sheltered life, so I didn't even, watch and read things like the Harry Potter series and all that stuff. I didn't watch MTV and BT. The only time you were allowed to watch BT was on Sunday mornings, for BT Gospel with Bobby Jones. And maybe, early Saturday, not early Saturday, but early Sunday afternoon. So that it's like the quote unquote like family stuff or the stuff that you can watch like with children. Other than that, I was not allowed, couldn't do the VH1s and the other ones, whatever they are. So I grew up, I didn't, listen to like secular music like that growing up. It wasn't until I went to high school when I was in a marching band that I, was able to listen like then because I had to, play along to the music. But other than that, that's all I knew. All I knew was church and home. Church and home. I had friends here and there, kind of, sort of, but mostly just church and home. So when I first started off college, I was still home, and then at one point during my college, maybe for like a year and a half, I was dorming. And I was dorming at this school here, and, it was my first time experiencing and seeing, good things about Africa because as bad as this is going to sound, somebody's going to hear this and they're going to be like, what? As bad as it's going to sound, I grew up, only thing I had ever seen about Africa as a child was the Feed the Children commercials. As crazy as that sounds, that's all I saw. I didn't see, any of the glamour, any of the beauty, the beaches, the forest, and, the waterfalls. I didn't see any of that. All I saw was the kids who were malnourished, and they had the flies trying to come out, come to their eyes and stuff like that. That's all I saw as a child. And then when I went to high school, I started meeting people. Like, I joined the African Student Association, and though I was an African American, and I joined, and I started hearing, okay, well, it's not poverty everywhere, but it is better here. So when I started hearing that, I was like, okay. But when I went to college, that is when I started hearing people say, I'm only here just for school, and then I'm going back home, or things like that. Or I ended up going to this function, I'll just say it like that, this function where, the people, they were talking about the beauty of Africa, the rich lands that we came from, how we had all this stuff, we were self-sustaining, all this stuff. I had never heard any of that before. So I was just like, wow, and it fascinated me so much because I am truly a lifelong learner. And because I am a lifelong learner, hearing something like that, especially me growing up in straight suburbia, I was telling somebody the other day that I grew up in the part of Maryland where, like, we had deers, we had a snapping turtle that laid eggs in my backyard, we had raccoons, we had all that stuff. We had a mulberry tree out front. We tried to plant strawberries with the rabbits that would come in the yard, ate those. We had, all this stuff. So that's where I grew up at. I would never tell somebody like, oh, I grew up in, quote unquote, the trenches. And I didn't. I grew up in the suburbs. And I lived in a cul-de-sac, okay? So, I lived in a cul-de-sac. So for me, I grew up, not in the most African American of places. And I make that emphasis because, there are people who grew up in, like, these African American places, like really rich African American history, where they got a chance to experience culture and embrace the beauty of Africa. I did not grow up like that, so for me, hearing for the first time, like, oh, the beauty of it. And then, again, me being a lifelong learner, I started going online. I started, Googling these things. And for me, I was just like, what? Like, and I'm starting to see beaches. Like, there are going to be people who laugh at this because I'm reliving what it was like for me, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like the beaches, the waterfalls, these lush forests and the rivers and all that, and then the culture and the dress and the, the dance and all these things. And I was like, whoa, it was like sensory overload. It was like the most mental stimulation ever. It was just like, wow. Like, oh my goodness, like, and they do this and they do this, and the food. And then I started comparing the food to, like, African American food. I was like, we make something similar. It was like I was having a moment, okay? And when I was in school, when I wasn't, like, studying for, like, stuff in school, I would, in my spare time, be on the computer looking up stuff about Africa. And then the more I started to learn about the culture, I started seeing that I learned about the tribes, and I started learning that, like, certain tribes, they had, like, their own religions attached to them, and at the time I thought that, oh, if you're going to embrace the culture, you have to embrace the religion. I started to feel like, okay, if I wanted to learn about Egypt and the beauty of Egypt. I had to practice Kemeticism. I had to learn about Bastet and Anubis and, Ra and all those people. Oh my goodness. And then nature. And at that point, for me, I started really loving like nature and the outdoors. And, granted, I was a Girl Scout when I was younger, but when I got older, I was like, I want to help save the planet. And, I was on that wave, right? And so I started learning about not just Egypt, but then I started learning about Kemeticism and, those things. And then I ended up, what did I do? Did I take a DNA test at that point? I'm trying to think. Yeah, I took a DNA test at that point on 23andMe, and it had come out that genetically speaking, I am over half Nigerian. And it was at that point even more so that I was like, oh, I gotta learn. I gotta do this. And I gotta learn about all that. And I started learning about Nigerian culture. So, because I wasn't taught it, growing up. So I started learning about, the different tribes in Nigeria. And then I started learning about Yoruba, right? And so I started learning about Yoruba. And, in that culture, I learned about Ifa. And when I got to Ifa, I was like, what is this? It was like the Orisha and then like, I was like, wait, were those quote unquote angels that I was seeing when I was younger? I was like, were those the Orisha? Because the similarities were there. And I was like, wait, were those the Orisha? And literally, as I started to dive deep into that, then I learned more. It wasn't at that moment just about culture anymore. It was about learning this religion that I completely wasn't exposed to at all. And what's so crazy is, who would have known that whole thing would have come from just going to one event. It sparked a whole door to Pandora's box, and it was so crazy because it didn't just, make me say, okay, I want to look into Ifa. No, I looked into so much. I looked into New Age beliefs, channeling, your Kundalini, opening your chakras. At one point, I realized that I didn't just want to know about the things. I wanted to really practice the things, and I started practicing Ifa. I started practicing New Age beliefs. I was studying to be a shaman. I was doing sacred plant medicines like ayahuasca, sassafras, and kanna. I was, doing all of those things. And, then I started getting into the deeper stuff, and I started getting into divination. And I wanted to be a diviner. I was getting readings by this point. This was probably like 2016. I feel like I'm going to end up sharing most of my testimony here. This was like 2016. And I was getting a lot of readings by this point. And I was told a few things about me. I was told that, I was supposed to be a witch, and I was supposed to be a diviner, a priestess, and all this stuff. And yeah, it went from there. So from there, I started getting into all of like the witchy stuff as well, like not just Ifa, but like I was getting into all this stuff. I was creating all of these things, like I had a quote unquote book of shadows. I went in, like, it wasn't just like, oh well, she's what these girls call it now, like channeling her black girl magic. No, it wasn't like that. I was literally it wasn't like that. It was like I was really channeling my black girl magic, like my magic, and I was really doing a lot. Like, I was creating honey pots, which is why I don't use the brand Honey Pot now, but we won't talk about that in this episode. But I was, doing all these things. Like I said, I had my book of shadows. I was trying to learn all these types of craziness, and I remember when I started getting into herbs, it wasn't something that in the beginning, it wasn't something that I really had to study. It was something that just came to me. And I remember when I started to my mom, I was like, Mama, I want to start using herbs. My mother was like, oh, so you want to be a witch doctor? Mind you, she didn't know anything that was going on now, but she just knew that there were women in my family from times past that had, you call them root workers, right? And she was just like, oh no. And I was like, Mom, no. I was like, Mom, I'm saved, and that's not it. But mind you, I was practicing these things, and so what she was saying was valid. She wasn't saying anything wrong. It's just that I was trying to play it off as if I wasn't doing that. Oh, excuse me. I try not to yawn on these things, but I was trying to play it off like I wasn't doing none of that, but knowing good and well I was, right? But I wasn't using herbs to do roots, is the Southern folk would say. I was just using herbs as for medicinal, so for colds and stuff like that, right? But I was getting so deep, I even started doing stuff. Like I said, I was starting to do divination, so I was doing tarot cards, oracle cards. I was doing a lot. I was doing a lot. Tarot, oracle. I think I had a pendulum at one point. I was doing pendulum stuff, and I was doing a lot. And then of course I was learning at this time also about Ifa divination, because I was getting divination done, for me, and the readings and the sacrifices and all that stuff, and I was doing it all. I was doing it all. And I was just going deeper and deeper and deeper. I was connecting with more people, not just in Nigeria, but also here in America that did Ifa and, did these other things as well. And I was just going as deep as I can go. And mind you, I was still going to church. There was never a time where I was like, I'm not going to go to church. I was still going to church, still going to church, still trying to fit in there as well as do my own thing over there. And it was a lot. It became a lot. And so fast forward to 2018, I'll go there. Fast forward to 2018. Being more specific, December 2018 is when I decided I was going to go even further in my Ifa journey, and I ended up doing my hand of Ifa. And that's a person's first initiation entry point into Ifa, mostly. And I did my hand of Ifa, and I found out I was a quote-unquote daughter of Oshun, and I was doing all of that. I had my leggings, I had my ide, which is basically for those who don't know, your bracelet and your necklaces and stuff like that. And, I was finding out all this stuff, quote unquote. And it was so interesting because at the time I'm like, oh my gosh, the stuff that's telling me about stuff that's happened before legit happened. And that's what really had me whoa. I think that's when I first realized, okay, this is actually, something legit and not whatever. So that was my thoughts at that point. And so I was doing that. I was just doing more of the work and doing the ebo. So the ebo means sacrifice, and that is when you do a sacrifice from a reading, because whenever you consult these spirits, they always ask for something in return, and that is the ebo, the sacrifice. So I was doing all of that, and I was mentally preparing myself for initiation. I didn't know when it was going to be, but I wanted to get my full initiation as well as my initiations to Oshun and all that stuff. So, I was still going to church still. But I think by this point, my mom started realizing, like, okay, something's going on, especially because I was dating this one guy at the time. And my mom, my sister, they call him the boyfriend from hell, because I had brought him to my mother's 60th birthday. Oh my goodness, I just told her age. Mom, please don't kill me. I brought him to her birthday, and so I wanted them to meet him, and he came, and he really ruined the birthday party. Mom, if you listened this far, or if you listened, Mom, I'm so sorry. All these years later, I'm so sorry. But he ruined it, because he was just very apologetic and very unapologetic in his views. He knew that I had a Christian household, so he knew not to really go in, but he was very unapologetic when him not being in the church. He was very very keen on them knowing that. But he did come with us to church, because again, I was still going to church, so he did come with us to church. But it was still he was just really going for the music and stuff like that when he was going. But then my mom was like, well, what do you believe? If he believes this, what do you believe? And that was for the first time my mother heard me say, I believe that there are multiple paths to God, and everybody has their own journey. My mother was like, the blood of Jesus. Morgan was like, My sister's name was Morgan, for those of y'all who don't know. And Morgan was like, And it was a long thing. They ended up having a little intervention for me at the church. Then my pastor's mother, she would wake up and pray for me at 4 a.m. in the morning. Anybody who knows my church and my pastor's mother specifically knows that she is a prayer warrior. When she says she's going to pray for you, she's going to pray for you. And praying she was doing, but I was still going to church. They knew that if they shunned me from doing stuff at church, they knew that I was just going to go off the rails, right? So still going to church. At this point, I started getting mixed up with more people, and I started getting involved, with even more quote unquote magic stuff. I started dealing with more Babalawo. So a Babalawo is an Ifa priest. So he's a priest. He, does the divining and things like that. And so I started dealing with more Babalawos and more Iyanifas, which are the Ifa priestess, and so I started dealing with them and, really starting to go deeper, but still being very undercover, because again, I was still living at home. So I was like, I can't just really go all out because I'm still living at home. So I gotta really play it off. But this one I was like, you know what, I need to move. And I was trying to find places to move. I was like, should I move to Nigeria? It was because I was like, I want to be able to practice, but I can't practice in my house, because I think at this point, I didn't have any official Oshun stuff, but I had an Oshun altar I set up, and then I had my Iken, which are the things you divine with. So I had that in the house, but I had it under my bed, and I never forgot. I had everything. I had a little setup for my ancestors, because at the time I thought that they could get it. And I had so much stuff, and I never forget the day I went down the street because I wanted some Trini food, and I was like, Mom, I'm gonna get some Trini food. Do you want some? And she was like, yeah, just bring back something simple. And so I went. Man, when I came back, all the stuff was on the trash. My mom had taken pictures of it. The Holy Spirit really was speaking to my mom and told her to get the stuff out the house, because literally I had stuff, but I had it hidden. So you wouldn't have been able to see it unless you were looking for it. My mom, she found everything, every single thing. Found everything. She called my sister. I think she might have called my pastor too. But she definitely called my sister, because my sister, I think she was at work at that point. And Mom threw it all out. She was like, oh, you're not going to be practicing none of that in here. That's when she really realized I was doing stuff. But then again, trying to survive, I didn't try to battle too much. You know what I mean? I was still like, I took the low road. I said, okay, let me not. And at that point, I was even pushing even more so to either move to a different state or just move out or move to a different country, i.e. Nigeria. There was even a point where I connected with one lady, and I had quote unquote moved to her house, which was in a different state, and I was there for like a couple weeks. And then I decided to tell my family, like, I practice Ifa, like, and I called myself explaining it to them, and of course my mom called me breaking down, crying. I was like, Mom, this is my path, like, and I'm like really adamant by this point. My sister, was called, and then my dad, and at one point it was a 3-way between my mom. Well, not really a 3, it was a 4-way between my mom, my sister, my dad, and I. And even though my parents, aren't together at this point, they're still like, look, no. And it was really rough. It was really rough. I waited a couple days because it was just like, my mom was like, you're really breaking my heart. Like, I'm so broken. Like, you've broken me down. And my dad's like, Kelsey, look what you're doing to your mom. Like, and my sister was just like, oh, you gonna put us games? You can get out. But I'm gonna pray for you, but you can get out. I waited like a few days, and then like I really felt, even then, like though I felt far from God, or far from the Christian God, which is the true God. Let me make that clear. The Christian, who the Christians believe is God, is the only God that matters, the only God that really exists. All the other ones are non-existent, but we'll get there when we get there. But I felt even then like the pull, like you need to go home. So I ended up packing my stuff, and the girl at the time, she was just like, are you sure? And I'm like, no, I need to go home. So I went home, and it was so interesting because at this point it was clear what I was doing, right? It wasn't, excuse me, I try not to yawn on these things, but it wasn't at that point, them guessing. Now it's like, okay, well, she told us herself, so it's not, it's not us just saying, well, maybe, but like, no, she's telling us this is what she practices, this is what she believes, this is what she's trying to venerate her ancestors and right? And I'm so like gone by this point. But everybody, they knew, like, okay, we can't just up and just beat her up about it. We gotta show her still the love of God, and we still got to just really just pray for her, And so I never forget, a couple years went past. I was still going to church, but I'm still doing all of my stuff. Like, I'm still doing everything. I'm still doing every single thing. Like, I'm still getting readings. I'm still doing readings, not in Ifa readings, but I'm still doing oracle readings for people. I was learning more about numerology. I was just deep diving OD by this point into so many things. Like, I was like, I'm going to create this path for myself that encompasses all the things I like, this universal type of religion that I was going to practice. And like, it was just, I was so gone. Like, my mind was so gone. I didn't know left or right. My mind was so gone. It was just because there was so much information flowing around, and I didn't have a filter. And the filter I'm speaking about is I didn't have Jesus. I had no relationship with him. Though I was still going to church, I was still, the shout breakout, because it don't take a relationship with Jesus to shout. It don't. And so I was still, shout breakout, I'm a shout, they want to quicken, I could quicken too. Like, you know what I mean? I was doing that. And at that point, I was just like, I could see the Orisha all in the church, like in the drums, I could see Shango, and the dance, I could see Oya. And I was so gone. There was so much floating, like there was so much going on. But even then, God still didn't turn me over to a reprobate mind. My mind was wandering. I had a wandering mind for sure, but I wasn't in a reprobate state, and I'm grateful to God for that. And I was still being quiet, but at the same time, still planning initiation, still consulting with the Babalaos and Ifa, and I was finding out more stuff about myself, still trying to do like my quote-unquote magical stuff, still trying to do my shaman stuff, still doing readings, I was still doing so much, but still going to church, right? So then in 2021, I ended up adding something else, and I added Haitian Vodun. I didn't go deep into Haitian Vodun, but I had a period where I was getting Vodun readings, right? I was getting Vodun readings by this point, and I was just like, I need to get to Nigeria. I need to do my initiations. And I met this one Babalao through a couple different people that I knew. And I met this one Babalao, and like we started really working towards me getting to Nigeria to do my full initiation to Ifa, Ifa, Oshun, and a couple other Orisha. Well, we all know as spirits. And so I was really planning silently. Now, mind you, these things cost money. It's the readings, the materials, and then now you're talking about taking a flight to a different country, and then you gotta pay for more initiations, and then it was a lot. It was a lot, and a lot of money wasted. But like I was, like convinced, like, no, you're going. This is going to be the year you're going to go get initiated. Like, you've been practicing Ifa now since 2015. And so it's been 6 years, and now you need to go and get initiated. And so that's what I was set to do. I was going in when it came to preparing for this initiation. Like, I was going in, I was really like, I paid for my flight. I was like, however, I gotta get to Nigeria. I'm gonna get to Nigeria. So fast forward to me finally telling my family, like, I'm going to Nigeria. I lied, and I was just like, one of my friends is getting married, and I'm gonna go, and I'm gonna do that. And that's what I told them, and they were like, oh, okay. I was like, and I had other friends out there too. I was like, I'm gonna see them when I'm out there, and all this stuff. I didn't tell them nothing about the initiation. I was like, I had to really make it so that they thought that, oh, she's not practicing Ifa anymore and stuff like that. So was it September or October I went down? I want to say it was probably September, either September. No, it was October. It was the middle of October. I was like, September is when I finished paying for the ticket, and because I did it in installments, and then October is when I actually went. And so I went down, and I did my Ifa and my Oshun initiation, and it was really really intense. It was really, really intense. Like, really, things. My head had to get shaved. That was my first time, like, having my head fully shaved. And like, so much happened. I don't want to go into like the details of all that happened, but it was just really intense, and my family was like, video calling and stuff like that, because at the time, I still had my son. So my son, he had just turned 1. He was 13 months old at the time. So, they were still calling me. I was talking to him, stuff like that. And I was just lying. Like, whenever they would video call, and if something was going on, I would try to like play it off. Like, I did so much. And, I knew that they knew something, but they didn't know fully what had happened. They just knew something. And so, I was just trying to still play it off. And I was practicing. I got initiated. I was there for a month, got initiated. When I came back, I was trying so hard to like hide stuff, but I knew from before of me hiding stuff before my mom finding it, I knew that I couldn't just simply, try to just put it just in the old place. So I was getting really creative about where I hid the stuff. And like sometimes if I was going to be gone for a long period of time, I would take stuff with me because I had a lot. I had my Oshun bell. I had mad stuff, right? And I was just like, okay, you got to see this through. You've initiated now. It's not the same as just, just practicing, but now you actually initiated, so you gotta actually like do some stuff. And it was just so crazy. It was so crazy because even then there was stuff that was supposed to be done for me while I was doing initiations, and it didn't happen. Something would come up and it didn't happen. And like I realized, when I came out to Christ later on, I realized that like, okay, God will just keep me from those things. So we're not there yet. Some stuff happened before we got there. And so what happened was I started finding out more about the Babalawo that did the initiations for me, and how much of a bad man he was. And then I found out later on that he falsified some parts of the initiation. And I was just like, what in the world? Like, I started talking to other Babalawos, like, okay, well, what do I do? How do I fix it? And I ended up going even deeper, and like they were like, yeah, you gotta do this for Egbe and this for Egbe and this for your ancestors, your Egun, and they told me I need to do all this stuff. Like they're like, you need to do all this stuff, you need to do this, and you're gonna have to come back to Nigeria. And I'm like, what? I'm like, yeah, it was wild. And at the same time, on the other side, my son, by this point, had really developed a love for God on his own, because I told myself, I was just like, everybody's journey is different. I was like, if he wants to go to church, he can go to church, it's fine. Like, I'm not going to persuade him otherwise. Like, if he wants to go, he can go, But the thing is, though, that as he started to grow, like he really would like really go and worship. Like he would literally, I see him playing worship music like on his little phone, and he's lift up his hands and he just closed his eyes, and you could tell he was really in the presence of the Lord. Like he was really in the presence of the Lord. And it was so interesting because I'd be looking, and like, even though I'd be like, I practice Ifa, I don't, that stuff, whatever. I was just like, I would be so amazed at how pure his worship was, like how pure he wanted to worship God. And I'll never forget, one day I was going somewhere, and, God knows that I love to learn. And like, even though I'm very creative and everybody knows me, they know that I'm very creative, but there is a logical side to me that a lot of times people don't really see too much unless you've worked with me in like a business way, or unless you've, unless you have, seen it in such a way that we've had like a deep conversation, and I was walking down the street and God revealed to me something about the Garden of Eden. So this I will call the Garden of Eden theory. Like I said, I was walking and God dropped this like in my spirit. Back in the day in the New Ages, I'd be like, it was a download. But God had dropped this in my spirit about how the Garden of Eden, you had the knowledge, the tree that claimed the knowledge of good and evil, because good and evil have always existed from the very beginning. The way and the anti-way existed from the very beginning. And so in Ifa, Ifa is seen as an oracle, the oracle that witnessed creation, right? The oracle that witnessed creation. It's seen as the light. It's seen as Elah, like the light, right? Now, who also witnessed the creation of humankind and all of the things on the planet and all of those things? Lucifer, who wants to be seen as like the light, the bright light of the morning star, stuff like that. The one who wants to be that, but he is not. Lucifer. But he witnessed creation. Lucifer was there when this world was being created. And so his presence was always there. And his thing was that since he knew all of these things, his thing was that he wanted to be like the the informant on all things, good and bad. Not even just like the evil things, but just so that people could trust him, so that the shine could come off of God, and even when like God started to tell me there's much more about it. I may even drop the video. So there's a video I recorded on my YouTube about the Garden of Eden theory, but so you probably see a couple links in this. But when God started to just like let me know like what you're practicing is literally evil, and the head of this thing is the one who says that they witnessed creation, which is Lucifer, the oracle of Ifa that you are patronizing is Lucifer, labeling himself as Ifa. And it's a whole, God's talking like it's a Luciferian practice. And I'm like, no, God. I'm like, no, that can't be it. And then like literally, that thing, it sat with me for like some days. And then like, that plus like my son at this point, it's like he had like upped his ante in worship. Like he was just like going in, he'd be like running around the house, like clapping his hands and, all this stuff. And he was always wanting to listen to like my pastor preach on YouTube and all this stuff. And so like all of that like came into like, and so then literally there was one day in May, and this is now May 2022. Mind you, I got my initiations at the end of 2021. So in 2022, everything that was going on, finding out that this Babalawo was doing fraudulent stuff, like in very bad things, and, that plus, my son, and then plus like this guy started appealing to my logical side because my emotional side was so far from God. It wasn't turned towards God at all. So he started saying, okay, well, if your emotional side isn't turned to me, your logical side is, and so I want to appeal to your logic. And one day I was really struggling in May 2022. I was really struggling, and like stuff just wasn't going how they said it was going to go if I did these initiations. Like nothing was happening right. And like I think my mom, she might have been resting, or she may have been something. I don't know. I don't think she was. If she was home, she was just in her room. And then I was like, say I was about to go out, and I had packed up all my stuff, and I packed up all my stuff, and I put it in a box, and I got in the car with the box. I said, Mom, I'll be right back, if she was home. And I was just like, look, God, I said, God, I don't know what is happening in my life right now. I was told that it was going to get better. Mind you, I'm telling God, like, I'm basically talking to God about the craziness, right? And I'm like, God, I was told it's going to get better, but it's not getting better. And like, stuff is crazy, and it's going wild. And God, if you're even remotely hearing me at all, I said, God, you're going to have to show me something. I was like, because right now, I said, I got this box of stuff in the car, and I forgot the word I used for the stuff, but I said, I got this box in the car. And I was just like, if you want me to follow you, I got to get rid of all this stuff. I said, if you hear me, you're going to have to show me a sign or something. You're going to have to show me a sign. I was like, because I don't know what to do. I don't know if I should just go deeper and then with other people, or I need to go back to really following God for real and following you. Like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't know. And I was just like, I don't know. I have no clue as to what I'm supposed to do. I said, but if you want me to follow you, you're going to have to show me something. you're going to have to show me something. I was like, because right now I'm lost. I'm real lost, you know? And it was in that moment, I was sitting and I just like felt the need to just listen to some music, but I didn't really know what I wanted to listen to. So I was like, hey Siri, like, play me a song. And the song that came on was Reckless Love of God, like Reckless Love. How's it go? Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I didn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you gave yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And that song came on. And I just bust out crying, like, and I had it on repeat. I was in the parking lot at a Stop and Shop, but it's not a food bazaar. I was in the parking lot, I was in tears, like, I was just like, God, like, I started apologizing. God, I was like, God, I'm so sorry, like, I'm repenting. I'm like, God, I'm so sorry for, like, doing this, like, I'm explaining to God, like, I was doing it because I was just trying to find, like, who I am. Like, I didn't know who I was, and I'm trying to find it. I'm like, God, please help. Like, I don't know who I am, and I need your help. Like, I didn't know who I was, and it was so crazy because for the first time in my life, I was just like, what are you doing? I was like, what are you doing? And I was like, God is real. That it's not just what your parents said or your grandparents, and it's none of that. Like, that for a fact. You've seen in your own life how God is real. Like, you've seen it, And I took that box. I said, God, I'm about to do something that I'm honestly scared to do. I said, I'm going to take this box and I'm going to get rid of the items that is in this box. And I said, God, that scares me because I was always told if I get rid of it, I'm going to die and all that stuff. And I said, God, look, I need you to protect me. I was like, because this ain't no joke, and I got rid of it. And I remember the moment I left it for the trash, I felt so much relief. Like, I think I recorded a video. If I did record a video after I did that, I'll know by the video. I'll put it in the description too. But I got rid of it. I had reached out to a brother that I had met a couple days later because I started singing back in the trains again, but now I was singing gospel music. And I came across a brother who heard me singing, and we connected, and I ended up like talking to him about what was going on and like what I had done and stuff like that. And I ended up receiving deliverance from all of those spirits. And I started to talk about my testimony, and I started to proclaim the gospel, and I started to do all this stuff. And you would think that it would stop there. You would think that it would just stop there, but it really doesn't, because even though I was doing all that stuff, I was still trying to find my particular place, because I was like, I'm quite a bit different from, all these people. Like, I'm still very different from the Christians that I know. Like, the Christians that have been in church all their lives, yeah, they might have messed around and done some foolishness, but they didn't go like the route that I went, so I was still very different, and I found myself a lot of times alone, because at that particular time, I hadn't met anybody who had, was in the church, walked away from the church, like, real bad, and came back to Christ. Like, I only knew people who were in the church and they walked away and they never came back. Like, I was just like, I don't know. So, like, I felt quite a bit alone, and that idleness and being alone, that triggered something very interesting that would happen in 2023, and that is the loss of my brother. So on October 30th, 2023, it was a very crazy day for me. It is the day that my brother passed away, 4 days after his birthday. And that was a very crazy time for me because it was just like, one, it was 4 days after his birthday. And it's so funny because you never know how the enemy can use trauma. And, that spirit that lingers with trauma, that spirit of trauma, you never know how it's going to affect you, and the thing is, I'd experienced loss before, you know what I mean? But such a close loss. Like I lost both my grandmothers, 4 months and a day apart from each other, like literally 4 months and a day apart from each other. One in November 2020, and then the next in March 2021. So like literally right back to back, I lost both my grandmothers from similar health conditions, but even then it was like, okay, they were older and stuff like that, but I lost my brother and he had just turned 47. And you never know how grief is going to hit you, because now, granted, before that time in 2023, I had like intrusive thoughts about like, Ifa and stuff like that, that would come up. But I would just always kind of like, whatever, I would put them to the side. I never would, never really paid them much any mind. I didn't rebuke them, but I didn't pay them much any mind. So I guess like they kind of built up, because then my brother passed away. All these thoughts came rushing to me. Like, and I'm guessing these were the thoughts that, like, I didn't rebuke. I just put them to the side, where it's like, okay, I was like, wait, hold on. My brother passed 4 days after his birthday, and he was just so happy, being at home and spending, his birthday with, his family, his wife and my nephew. And I was like, well, maybe, I was like, oh my gosh, I was like, maybe my brother was, I'm telling you my thoughts. I was like, maybe my brother was Abiku. Like, maybe he was Abiku, which is something, it means born to die in Yoruba. And so it means like, a person, like, they made they tell you that's like the person made some type of agreement and that they're going to die on this day and will not do whatever. Anyway, so I'm like, all these thoughts is like rushing. I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe my brother, maybe he is going to, like, maybe he was Abiku, and maybe just because he didn't do the rituals, like all these thoughts like came out of nowhere. Like when my brother passed, it was just like literally they came out of nowhere. I was just like, yo, he said, oh my gosh, wait, okay, so if he was Abiku, I was like, and I was told before that I was a Mary, which is a type of Abiku, which is like basically like they're gonna, whatever, same concept, right? And I'm like, well, maybe, I am, maybe like it's maybe it's my turn next or whatever. I started getting this like extreme anxiety when my brother passed, and all these thoughts, the thoughts that I never rebuked, and I'm being very specific when I say that, the thoughts that I never rebuked, I only put them to the side. You know what I mean? And they all started coming up when my brother passed away. Like all the thoughts started coming up, and it was like, it's crazy because I was like, but I've been, it's been over a year since I let that stuff go. Like, what is happening? But it's because I never rebuked those thoughts that I had earlier in that year, and it came out when trauma came to play, and like it was at that point that like I ended up reaching out to some people who I used to talk to, and I was just like, I know you guys know I went back to church and stuff like that. I was like, but I need to get a reading done. Like my brother just passed away, like suddenly after his birthday, like I need to get a reading done. And I got a reading, and they were just saying all this stuff in the reading, and I was like, I need to go back to Nigeria. I need to reinitiate to Ifa, to Oshun, do my Egbe, do whatever else I need to do. Like, I was literally like doing that. And so within 1 month of my brother passing away, you figure he passed away October 30th, 2023. Before that, I had no plan to go back to Nigeria, at least not for like then. But I had no plan to go back to Nigeria. right? And then all of a sudden, within a month time of me getting that, my brother passing, getting that reading done, I was on a plane headed to Nigeria. And I was on a plane to do my initiations over again. And it's crazy because I left my iPad there because I didn't want to bring my iPad. I was like, because I've lost stuff with it before, then not bring any of that stuff. I'll leave it. I'll let, my son play on it while I'm gone. But by this point, I started talking back to different Babalawos, and I was like, I'm coming to Nigeria, and I'm talking to all of them, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, this is what I'm going to do, and, I'm coming to do this, and this. I had turned the iPad off, but they turned it on so that my son can use it. And they turned it on so that he can use it, and that's when they saw that I was talking to different Babalawos again, something I hadn't done in a long time. And they called me, and they were like, Kelsey, what are you doing? I thought you were there just to spend your birthday there and like the getaway because your brother passed, and you there doing all this stuff. They were pleading with me not to do it, and I was like, no, I'm going to do it. And I ended up going through with it. I don't want to dwell too long on that particular part, but I ended up going back through with it again, and I got reinitiated. This was, mind you, November into December 2023. So recently, right? I had went back into it, got reinitiated again. And Don stuff, my family by this time though, they knew. And they just prayed. They just kept praying. They said, we gotta pray for Kelsey, but they didn't, even then, they weren't like, beating over the head. They just kept praying for me. They kept praying for me and praying. So initiation's done. There was something that was supposed to be done again on my last day being there, but again, God stopped it again. The same thing that was supposed to happen when I went the first time, it was supposed to finally happen this past time, and God stopped it again. God was like, it reminds me of, in the book of Jonah, when Jonah was trying to go to Tarshish, and like literally when he was getting thrown over, he ended up getting into a well that God prepared to send him back to Nineveh. They kept praying for me and just approaching me from a place of love, even though they knew what I had done. So by the time that I came back, I was thinking about extending my trip, and I was like, you know what? My mom's birthday is the day after I was going to come back, so I need to be there for her birthday. So I ended up coming back. And when I came back, they still, hit me with so much love. They knew what had happened. They could tell what had happened. It was evident. I had to shave my head again, and, I was wearing, like, the beads and stuff like that, so they knew exactly what had happened. But what else had happened was that, when I came back, like I said, they were just so, we're praying for you, anything. They were just really nice. They knew, not to just push me away. And I never forget on Christmas Day, we were at my sister's house. It was a little weird because, everybody knew what, I was doing. So we were at my sister and brother-in-law's house. And even though we were there, everybody's like, oh, being all family and stuff. I ended up getting this sharp pain. When I tell you sharp, I mean sharp. I had this sharp pain in my chest, and it was starting to radiate to my left shoulder and go down my left arm. It was so bad. Oh my gosh. This pain was so bad. It was so bad. And it kept happening. And my mom, she was calling. I was sitting in the kitchen while they were all in the living room because I was just wanting to be by myself. And my mom was calling on me when I didn't answer. She was like, Kelsey? And I was like, I can't talk, Mom. I can't talk. And she came in and they saw what was happening to me. So they started praying for me. My mom was just like, Kelsey, the enemy is trying to kill you while you're in this state. He's trying to kill you while you're here. She was like, Kelsey, you cannot die like this. She said, you will not go to heaven. You cannot die like this. And I'm crying, but I'm still like, I'm like, amen, thank you for the prayers. But I'm still stubborn, right? And it was crazy. Like, the pain was so bad. Like, and me even just being just stubborn, like that spirit of stubbornness, literally just prayed for me, and literally it was helping the pain go away. But I'm still being stubborn. So next day we go, and now it's the day after Christmas, and I start having the pain again. So my mom's like, we'll just go to the hospital. I'll take you. I'm praying for you. I'm like, oh, thanks. I get to the hospital, and like literally I was in the hospital, and I'd had a seizure in the hospital. Not only did I have a seizure in the hospital, it was like one of my like little like smaller ones, but my eyes started to roll in the back of my head, and the nurse hit me on the arm, was like, Miss Spears, and I'm like, I'm here, but I could feel like my life force dwindling. And I don't know who out there has ever felt that feeling of your life force like going away almost, but I felt it. It was so strong. And so I ended up calling Nigeria. Instead of calling my family, I called Nigeria, and I said, something's wrong. I said, I called them on WhatsApp video. It's like, something is wrong. I said, I feel like my life force is going away. Something is wrong. So then they wanted to consult my Ekbe, which they tell you are like your heavenly mates, but they're really familiar spirits that are assigned and attached to you. And they were telling me, they were like, your Ekbe says it's your mom. Your mom is praying for you again. Literally, I'm telling you what these spirits are telling the priest and priestesses there to tell me. They're like, your mom, it's your mom. She's praying for you again. And the spirit that is with your mom is fighting the spirit that is that is us. Like, it's fighting us. And both spirits are trying to fight over you. And that is why it is killing you. Literally, this is what they're literally telling me when I'm laying in the hospital bed. I'm laying in the hospital bed, and this is what is being told to me. And I'm like, what? And it started to all hit me. It was like, I know my mom has the Holy Spirit. I'm like, so if the Holy Spirit is fighting against whatever these spirits are, I'm like, how can these spirits be good? If the Holy Spirit is fighting against these spirits, how can they be good? You're like, oh my gosh. They were like, you have to tell your mom to stop praying, that she has to just let you go. You have to tell her she has to just let you go. And like, when they're telling me this, like, I don't know if they can really see my face like that. I think I had my mask on, so they couldn't really see my full face, but my mouth was wide open. I was just like, what? Like, hearing all this stuff, and I was just like, yo, this is crazy. I'm like, my mom has the Holy Spirit, so if that spirit is fighting against, there's no way that these spirits could be good spirits. What have I gotten myself into again? It was in that moment that I realized, Kelsey, you have gotten yourself back into something that you were delivered from, that the enemy tried to hold you in, but you were delivered from. So, no, this is not it. Like, I don't think when they were telling me that the spirit with my mom was fighting them, they didn't know what that would have done for me as far as, like, the logical side, even the emotional side. Here, my mom, who has protected me literally my whole life by the grace of God, no, that's not it. that's not it, you know? And it was at that moment I started thinking about my return to Christ. But first I had to analyze why I left again. So then silently I spent the next few days just trying to figure out, okay, you know, there were some things you did when you were in Nigeria, and there were some, some things that you need to get rid of, because I didn't bring everything back with me from Nigeria this time, but I brought a lot back, and it's like, you got to get rid of it, but, what are you going to do? How are you going to do this? Like, what's going to happen? And I just, for the first time since my brother had passed away, I had a prayer to God, the true God, the real God, the God that is responsible for everything around us, the God that doesn't need help, the God that doesn't need to be fed to work, the God that wasn't created, the God that is the creator. And I prayed to that God, that real God, and I said, I need help. I need you to help me. As simple as that. I need you to help me. So, on December 29th, 2023, I decided I wanted to give my life back to Christ. I still had the stuff at that time. I still had the stuff, but I said, I still want to give my life back to Christ. And God, show me what I need to do as far as getting rid of this stuff, like how to do it. So then on Watch Night service, I know most people are familiar with Watch Night services. For the Watch Night service, before I told my mom, I said, Mom, I got to get rid of this stuff before going into the new year. I have to get rid of it. I said, Mom, can we leave a little early to go to church? I said, because I need to drop this stuff in a dumpster before we go to church. Like, I can't have it in my possession in the new year. I can't. And so she's like, no problem. She was like, yeah, sure. So we dropped it in a dumpster on the way. And I haven't looked back since. And then I reached back out to the brother that, did the deliverance for me before. And I told him, I said, bro, I wasn't honest. I said, I went to Nigeria for my birthday. And I said, I went back into Ifa, and I explained to him. And I was like, I need to meet up with you again, bro. And I said, this time, I really mean that I'm going to change for real. And like, of course, he did the deliverance again through the grace and the unction of the Holy Spirit. And we really just went in. Like, we went in. We went in, and that deliverance was so heavy. But there was so much freedom. Like, thank you, Jesus. Like, there was so much freedom. I almost want to cry, because there was so much freedom that came from that deliverance. And literally from that, like, God started to basically show me different things, like, and even developing who I am, not just as a woman of God, but just a woman, period. God started to speak to me and, just like let me know now that you can fully hear me, and why that thing happened before, but now you are back again. Now you need to work on these things. And God started to develop me, and like literally that developing was so intense. Like, even when it came to so much started to come into alignment. Like, I received the gift of the Holy Spirit with the evidence of speaking in tongues. I ended up I ended up being able to be the lead stage manager for an event that Minister Dunsin Oyekan did in Upper Room America, and to God be the glory for that. I met so many people, but now I was meeting people who, like me, they either started in the church, went this route and came back to church, or they started that way and then came to Christ. But I was still meeting people who understood, which is what I didn't have anymore. I developed a community. Shout out to the Misfits. I appreciate y'all. I know I don't talk to y'all as much. Shout out to them. Shout out also to the Deborah's Arisen group. I'll make sure they get this too. But like, I started to meet people like that I could say, okay, God, like, this is tribe. And then, I even started to connect more, even with like TAC, the Abstinence crew, part of the Sexless tribe, and connecting with them more, and some of them really developing relationships with more. And I'm like, to God be the glory. Like, I'm finally developing what I needed. I'm so grateful because there's even more things that came out of me coming back to Christ, and I'll talk about those at a later date. Those actually, there's one particular thing that happened when I came back to Christ, and that deserves its entirely own podcast episode, because even that was wild, and it's a blessing. It's been a blessing. It is a major blessing. But yeah, the return was everything, and I'm so grateful to God for not just receiving me as a prodigal daughter once, but twice. The reason why I'm doing this is because there's going to be some people who they either started in church and left, or they started elsewhere and left, and they are trying to figure out, should they come back, should they come at all, or they're already back, like, what's next? And the reason why I'm doing this is because I said, I have experienced it twice. I know what it's like. And I want to be more vocal about that. I want to be more vocal in letting people know that you can experience Christ in any culture. And letting people know culture and religion, they can run side by side, but they are not the same. Just because I'm Indian, I'm not Indian, but if I was, just because I was Indian doesn't mean that I need to practice Hinduism. I can be Christian and be Indian. I can be Native American and be Christian. I don't need to practice Native American spirituality. You know what I mean? So, even when it comes to African, I can be African and be a true follower of Christ. I don't have to practice any of these religions in Africa that speak against Christ. I don't have to. There's a documentary that I'm going to share by the Jude 3 Project that is forever changing my life, and it's available for purchase, so I'll send their website. If you can't afford it for whatever the reason, please send me an email, and I'll make sure I leave my email in the description. But I had to do this, and I'm going to start talking more about Christ and culture, so that those of us who are wondering, we don't have to wonder. We can find Christ in our culture. We can understand that we can, though we exist in this world, we don't have to be of this world. That is my reasoning behind this, because I didn't have that. And now, thank God, I'm meeting people like that. But even then, my approach is, a little different, because I love culture. Anybody who's really had a conversation with me, like a real in-depth conversation with me, you understand that I love culture. I love, 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 love culture. If you hear my son in the background, I'm sorry. He's home today for Easter Monday. But, I love culture. And I can experience African culture without having to experience the religion that wants to connect to the culture. You get what I mean? And so I have to, share that with other people. So as you go through this journey, please stick with me. They won't all be just audio podcasts. Some of the podcasts will also be video. This podcast will appear on not just on the podcast streaming platforms, but also on like my YouTube and stuff like that, so people can get it widespread. But some of them will be video then turned into audio. Some of them will not just be me talking, some of them will be other people. But I had to get this message out because we all need Jesus now more than ever before. And I want to show that Jesus is far beyond culture, and we can use our own cultures to experience Christ in a way like never before. I hope this podcast blessed you. Again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, whatever time you hear this podcast. Know that I greet you. God bless.